Rosewood Audio presents Murder at Birdland, an audio novel narrated by its author, Mike Steinell. Murder at Birdland is a work of fiction loosely inspired by the lives and experiences of jazz musicians in the late 1940s who performed in and around 52nd Street in New York City. All names, places, and incidents depicted in this novel are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events is purely coincidental. And now, Episode 4 of Murder at Birdland.
Chapter 6, Family Secrets. The rain was intermittent as Martin drove back to Topeka, at times so heavy he could barely see the road. Water pooled in the low fields, and there was probably some danger of flooding, but Martin was unaware of anything but the questions that ran through his mind. They pelted him with persistence, just as the rain pelted his windshield. He thought of the experiment on Elm Street. He thought of Thomas Gaylord and the incident with the photo booth. What is this? What do you call it? How do I label it? An affliction? A gift? A talent? Like perfect pitch or a photographic memory? He hesitated to even think the phrase time travel. It seemed ridiculous. But could he? Could he travel back in time? Halfway to Topeka, the big question once again squeezed its way back in. How far? How far back? How far back can I go? 1949? A different person with the same affliction, gift, or talent might have already hatched 100 different plans to get rich. Plans to loop back and play the stock market, make a bet on a horse or a game. It would be easy to do. At times the rain was so relentless, Martin had to lean forward to see the road, but the questions did not abate. He thought of his father, Anthony Costello. Why? Why was he murdered? Who killed him? He remembered how Sylvia had described Anthony's mother's reaction. It's done. He's not part of the family anymore. The Costellos. Who were these Costellos? The rain stopped just as Martin reached the west edge of Topeka, but he didn't drive home. Instead, he went straight to Bart's Books on Kansas Avenue. It was Sunday, and Bart wasn't there, but a pleasant young man named Isaac found the one book they had on Kansas City crime. Wide Open Town, The History of Crime in Kansas City by Charles Peoples. Isaac did a quick search on the computer, which yielded two more. The Families in the Machine, The Story of the Kansas City Mob, and The Mafia of the Plains. He offered to order them for Martin, but then leaned in with a conspiratorial tone. You know, you can get them quicker through Amazon. What's Amazon? Martin asked. Without hesitation, Isaac replied, It's the thing that's probably going to put Bart out of business. Well, that's not good. Can't let that happen, Martin said, then placed his order for the books. Later at home, since it was Sunday night, Martin made popcorn, cut up an apple, but did not watch 60 Minutes. Instead, he began reading Wide Open Town. The book by Charles Peoples painted a gruesome picture of the various families that had controlled the KC rackets for 5 decades. The families, all Italian, Giovannini, Lazio, Carollo, Costello, and Savella, were connected by a series of allegiances and truces, all under the close supervision of Tom Pendergast, a corrupt political boss who ran the county Democratic Party. Using bribes and intimidation, he controlled not only the mob, but also the police. During his reign, Kansas City was a wide-open town where alcohol, gambling, and prostitution were readily available. Martin learned that Tony's father, Charlie Costello, had been a bodyguard for John Lazio and seized power when Lazio was assassinated. The book suggested that Costello may have murdered his boss or orchestrated it. The Costello family was large. It appeared that Tony had 3 brothers and a sister. The book was meticulously researched with numerous footnotes. Much of the information was documented from the Kefauver Report. Estes Kefauver, a senator from Tennessee, and the congressional committee that he chaired in the early 50s, blew the lid off organized crime in America. The committee held hearings in 14 major cities and called over 600 witnesses, focusing mainly on Kansas City, Chicago, and New York. The proceedings were televised, and Kefauver compared the situation in Kansas City to the lawless rule of the jungle. Members of the Costello family were summoned to testify, but refused to cooperate, each invoking the Fifth Amendment. Wednesday morning, Martin sat in his kitchen looking at the clock. At 8 a.m., he planned to call Dr. Charles Peoples. Peoples, a retired teacher of history at Washington University, lived in St. Louis. Calling before 8 felt rude, so Martin waited, watched the clock, and at 8 made the call. Before Martin could say a word, a cheerful voice answered. "Good morning, Janice. Everything's fine. Thank you very much for calling." Martin was confused. "Hello, is this Dr. Charles Peoples?" Now Peoples was confused. "Oh, you're not Janice, are you? Who is this?" Martin stammered. No, this is, I'm Martin Spencer, Dr. Martin Spencer." "Are you Janice's doctor? Did Janice call you by chance?" No, I'm sorry. I don't know who Janice is." Oh, okay. Sir, I cannot talk right now, but you can call me back in 5 minutes if you like." Before Martin could answer, Peoples had hung up. 5 minutes later, Peoples explained that a kindly neighbor named Janice made it her habit to call him every morning at 8 a.m. to check on him. Peoples lived alone and was in his mid-80s. "You see," he said with a soft laugh, "if I don't answer, Janice will call 911, and pretty soon I will have 2 policemen at my door, expecting to find me dead in my lazy boy." He laughed. "So, tell me your name again." Martin reintroduced himself and explained that he had read Peoples' book and wanted to know more about the Costello family. Yes, the Costellos," Peoples said. "Fascinating family. You know, it took me 10 years to write that book. I started doing research in the late 80s, and Vincent Costello was one of the first that I interviewed. By then, he was the only one in the family left. He was still in Leavenworth when I started my research. I'll tell you what, Vincent knew a lot about Kansas City crime, that's for sure." Where did the Costellos come from?" Martin asked. "Well, let me see," Peoples said. "According to Vincent, Charles Costello came from Ireland in 1910 and somehow ended up in Kansas City about 5 years later. He started working for a bootlegger named Lazio, rose through the ranks quickly because he was tough and smart. He met and married one of John Lazio's daughters, Sophia Lazio." "My grandmother," Martin thought. Then, remembering what he had read the night before, asked, "Dr. Peoples, your book suggests that Charles Costello killed John Lazio. Is that correct? That means he killed his own father-in-law?" The professor laughed softly. "Well, yes, that was probably a bit awkward, was it not? According to Vincent, his father didn't do it. Vincent claimed that it was someone from another family that killed Lazio." "Dr. Peoples, What do you think is the truth about that? Martin was contemplating the implications of his grandfather killing his great-grandfather. Well, Peoples sighed. From everything I learned, it's pretty clear that Charles Costello was a very ruthless and ambitious man. He was a violent man living in a violent time in a violent city. Kansas City was tough in those days. I think he might have been involved. But Vincent thought it was someone else? Yeah, he was pretty insistent about it, Peoples chuckled. Vincent said that when his dad found out who did it, let me get this right, he said he made them pay the tab. Peoples laughed again. Yeah, Vincent had a colorful way of speaking. What kind of man was Vincent? Martin asked. Well, you know, Dr. Spencer, Vincent's not dead. Not that I know of. Last I heard, he's still alive and lives in assisted living in a place off of 18th Street in Kansas City. Peoples continued talking, but Martin barely heard him. The words "still alive" rang in his head. His father's brother was still alive. Wait, he thought. Vincent was in New York when Tony was killed. He's in the photo in front of 21. He's the one in the hat. He was there. He might know who killed my father. Vincent's alive. In his confusion, Martin put his hand to his head and dropped the receiver. It made a loud sound on the other end. Peoples asked, Are you okay, Dr. Spencer? Are you still there? Martin picked up the phone, apologized, and then began a long explanation about Anthony Costello being his biological father, about discovering it only recently after Robert's funeral, the man who had raised him. Peoples offered his condolences. Oh, Dr. Spencer, I'm so sorry about your fathers, both of them. You're obviously dealing with a lot right now. I can see why you're so interested in the Costello family. Oh, yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Dr. Peoples, Martin asked carefully, is Vincent like? Well, seeing he's your uncle, I hate to speak ill of him. Yeah, I guess he would be my uncle, Martin said. But of course I never met him, so what's he like? What kind of man is he? Peoples sighed again. Honestly, I never felt comfortable around him. Prickly guy, cranky. Just kind of a sour man. Maybe like his father. There was something off about him, creepy in a way. I didn't trust him much. I fact-checked everything he told me. There were other siblings, weren't there? Martin asked. I think there were 5 siblings, Peoples said. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I have it written down. I write everything down, need to at my age. Hang on, I think I know where it is. A moment later he returned. Found it, amazingly. I got papers, files, notes all over the place. It's a mess here. But here you go. Yes, there were 5 siblings, 4 boys and 1 girl. Vincent was the youngest. I know from my interview that he was born in 1931. I do not know when exactly the others were born. Patrick was the oldest, Catherine was next, then Christopher, then Anthony, and finally Vincent. Professor Peoples, did Vincent ever talk about Anthony, my father? Not much. Seemed like he didn't want to talk about him. I got the impression from Vincent that there might have been some bad blood because Anthony turned his back on the family business after he came back from the war. He said that Anthony had died young, maybe in the 50s. I never knew any details or an exact date. Actually, I do. I do know the date, Martin said. November 8, 1949, in New York City. He was using a stage name at the time, Tony Martin. He was murdered. The case was never solved. Oh, my goodness, people said. Maybe that explains why Vincent was reluctant to talk about it. After a pause, Martin asked, What happened to the parents and the other siblings? Peoples explained that all the men had been called to testify at the Kiefhofer hearings and that they had all refused to cooperate, and by the late 50s they were all in prison, all except Vincent. "Why not Vincent?" Martin asked. "Well, Vincent went into witness protection, so apparently at some point he did testify. He flipped, as they say. Wouldn't tell me where they sent him, only that he messed up in the early 70s and was convicted for mail fraud and tax evasion. That's when he went to Leavenworth. He did 7 years there, then moved back to Kansas City and took care of his sister Catherine, who died shortly after." What about grandchildren?" Martin asked. Peoples chuckled. "Vincent never mentioned any. I suspect the Costellos might have been a little too busy committing crime and dodging the law to raise families." He laughed softly at himself for the clever turn of phrase. "Vincent never married, and no, he never said anything about any of his siblings having children. But now there's you, Dr. Spencer. I'd wager you are the only one." "I suppose so," Martin said, then asked, Do you have that address for Vincent?" The thought of his uncle still being alive was more than intriguing. "Somewhere. I have it written down somewhere, like I said. I write everything down, but this place is a mess. It might take me a while to find it. Perhaps you can give me a number so I can call you back once I've located it." Two minutes after they hung up, the phone rang again. "I found it," people said, "amazingly right where I thought it would be. And I found something else, a photograph of the family." "A photograph?" Martin asked. "Well, a photocopy of a photograph. Vincent gave it to me. Would you like a copy, Dr. Spencer?" Yes, of course," Martin said. Martin gave Peoples the fax number at the clinic, then asked, "What kind of photograph is it?" "It appears to be a family portrait of the whole family, parents and all the children, taken in a studio probably in the early 30s. The two older boys look to be in their early teens. Vincent is just a baby, probably 1. Peoples chuckled softly. "In the photo, he's crying, bawling his head off." After Martin hung up, he said softly to himself, Uncle Vincent, Uncle Vincent, still alive, living in Kansas City." He looked at the clock above the kitchen sink. Geez. He ran out of the house. For the first time in his life, he was late for work. Chapter 7. Woody's Photography. As Martin drove to Menninger's, he realized he had never been late for anything. At one time, being late for work would have been devastating, but things were different now. New information had pushed everything else aside. Just a few days earlier, he had learned that his real father was a jazz musician and a victim of a violent crime. Now there was someone living just an hour away who might have some answers about his father's death. Uncle Vincent. Overhanging everything was his struggle to process the reality of his ability to loop back in time. The crime book and his conversation with Charles Peoples had diverted him, but now the prospect of looping back confronted him front and center. Would it work? Would it really work? Could I go that far, 52 years? Could I do it? Could I really do it? Go back? If I did, what? What then? Martin had never traveled farther east than St. Louis or farther west than Salina, Kansas. New York City in 2001 seemed just as remote as New York City in 1949. There was something closer, though. Tooties Mayfair, 7953 Warnell Road, Kansas City, Missouri. where Tony and Sylvia had seen Charlie Parker. Over the years, Martin had spent a good bit of time in Kansas City, but wasn't sure if he had ever been on Warnell Road. One thing he knew for certain, he could drive there. As he drove, thoughts swirled and twisted in his brain like clouds in a rainstorm. I could find the spot with the photo. I could find the spot. What then? Suddenly he realized, wait, there are people in that photo, my mother and my father. If I loop to that spot in that moment, what will they see? He tried to imagine it. Would I be accused of being some wizard or a spirit? Would it be safe for me? What happens to the photographer taking the picture? Martin missed his first appointment, and his second patient was waiting when he arrived. He went through the motions, but at some point he realized that the patient had stopped talking and was staring at him, waiting for a response. Unfortunately, Martin hadn't heard a word. His mind was in 1949 at Tootie's Mayfair. Hoping for a graceful exit from the awkward situation, he offered a generic response. Interesting, very, very interesting. Tell me, Robert, how did that make you feel? The man frowned. My name's Roger. Martin apologized, and the session continued. He attended for a few minutes before his mind drifted back to the experiment. Need to find out what happens when there are people in the photo. At that point, Martin thought of the big swinger. I'm going to need more film. At lunch, Martin drove to Woody's Photography, a small shop in a strip mall on Fair Lawn. He had driven past it almost every day since 1979, but had never noticed it before. He was hoping they might have film for the Polaroid. His heart sank when he parked the car. Large photos filled the shop's front window, just like at the Varenhorst studio in Morgan. Before he even reached the sidewalk, the buzzing began. He hurried back to the clinic and called the shop from his office. Woody's Photography, Woody speaking. The greeting surprised Martin. It took him a minute to compose his thoughts. Oh, great, yeah, okay, so I'm speaking to the owner, correct? Yep, this is Woody. Just like I said, you got me. So what can I do for you? Well, you see, here's my problem. I'm trying to get some film for a Polaroid swinger. It's kind of old. Woody cut him off. Why in the world would you be using that piece of crap camera? Those are relics, mister. I know, but it's kind of a, I don't know, maybe for me it's a nostalgia kind of thing, you know? Woody snorted. Can't imagine why. Most of those don't even work anymore. They leak light. The lenses are usually scratched. The shutter mechanism is sometimes rusted. Let me ask you, does this camera work? Have you used it recently? Martin was happy to respond. Actually, it does work. I just need more film. Do you sell film? Film for the big swinger? Woody sighed. Well, I'm sorry, pal, but you might be out of luck. Don't think they've made film for that since the 80s. If you can hang on a sec, I'll get on the computer and check my suppliers. Martin could hear the soft clicks of the keyboard as Woody grunted, took in exasperated breaths, and talked to himself. Yeah, that's what I thought. Wow, what do you know? You still there, mister? Of course, Martin answered. So what model do you have? Is it the 20, the M15, or the 3000? I believe it's the 3000. It says Big Swinger on the front. So what's your name? Woody asked. Martin Spencer. Well, Martin, it looks like you lucked out. Fuji's now making film for that ugly piece of junk. But you know, Martin, you're just throwing good money after bad, trying to take pictures with that old thing. Why don't you come down and check out something a bit more up-to-date? I've got some great deals on new Nikon and Canon automatic SLRs. I think you'd be much happier with the quality of photos you can take with one of those." Martin tried his best to be polite. "Thanks, you're probably right, but the thing is, I need to take Polaroid pictures. You know, instant photos that develop quickly." Woody's tone lightened. "Ah, well, if that's what you need, you should check out the newer instant cameras. Polaroid's still making some models. Much more compact than that big swinger of yours." He snarled the words big swinger. "Fuji and Kodak both make a small instant camera. I don't stock those, but I could order one. I could get it by next week, and you could come by and pick it up when it comes in." Knowing that he couldn't risk going into the store, Martin ended the call. Yeah, well, let me think about it." 10 minutes later, Alice, Martin's secretary, was helping him search Amazon for film and a Fuji Instax mini camera. She was patient. "So now you click on that to add it to your shopping cart. Then when you're ready, you put your credit card number in that box. Then hit the Buy Now button." Martin was both amazed and suspicious. "Wow, that is so... Wait, Alice, is this safe?" "I think so," she said rather unconvincingly. Then she added, "What are the cameras for? Are you taking a trip?" Martin didn't answer at first. He closed his eyes, nodded his head, and then smiled. "Yes, I'm taking a trip. A big one."
You've been listening to Murder at Birdland, an audio novel. To learn more about the author and the story behind the music, visit murderatbirdland.com or mikesteinell.com.